Rob, let's stick with the NFL. And speaking of Plan Bs, Baker Mayfield, he's about on his Plan D or E. The Browns, the Panthers, the Rams, and now the Buccaneers. But, he's been playing all right, playing decent football. They off to a 2-0 start, but lost their first game last night, 25-11 to the Philadephia Eagles. And, Rob, the Eagles are interesting. They were my Super Bowl pick, team to reach the Super Bowl this year. I picked them in the preseason and picked them actually to win it all. And I feel good about my pick right now. They haven't wowed people because, they haven't been the most exciting or even dominating team off to this 3-0 start. But I feel like, Rob, they are going to keep improving as the season goes on. It is a long season with 17 games. Teams go up, teams go down. And I think they will just continue to improve because they do have two new coordinators on both sides of the ball, offense and defense. And so I think they're still getting used to, the new way they're doing things. But even so, after facing two teams out of the three opponents that made the playoffs last year, they still are averaging the same amount of points as they averaged last year, 28. They're giving up slightly fewer, 20 points last year, 19 this year. And their front line, offensive and defensive lines, Rob, have been phenomenal, to say the least. They have run the ball down teams' throats the last 2 weeks. They're averaging like 180 yards roughly, rushing the football, about 175 the last 2 weeks. That's given them time of possession advantages that are crazy. Last night, 39 minutes with the ball, only 21 for Tampa Bay. And defensively, Rob, they are allowing a ridiculous 48 yards a game rushing to their opponent. So I think that they got something good going. Jalen hasn't been great throwing the football, and I think he'll improve in that because that's really the one thing you're looking at saying, all right, they got to get better at that, and their defensive backfield could be better.
Yeah, my eye test is the Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts was a monster last year. He is not a monster, at least, Chris, through the first 3 games. 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Just watching the game last night, he missed some throws. I just looked at him. The numbers haven't been great. Just average. First game, I should say they had 2 interceptions.
Yep.
Last night against Tampa, he had 1 against Minnesota. And their first 2 wins, Minnesota winless. New England had only 1. What are they? 1-2 now. They lost their first 2.
Yep.
And Tampa was a good test on the road, so to get the win. But just Jalen Hurts, I'm not saying he's no good or anything. I'm just saying he's not the player so far that he was a year ago. And maybe it's the offensive coordinator. Maybe it's changes. But he was almost unstoppable a year ago. And I don't know if he's not throwing the football as well. Can you do something to beat this team? That's what made him so tremendous is we know he can run the football, Chris. But then last year he was able to pass the ball. And I think, you have to pick your poison. And now he just doesn't look like he's exactly the same passing the football from a year ago. Year ago, he's off to a great start already, and people are like, oh, this guy's got a chance to be an MVP. Not after 3 games. I don't remember exactly. But, he was on that track for most of the season. So that's what concerns me a little bit, the personnel changes and the coordinators, and if that affects him at all in the passing game.
Yeah, that's been, like I said, that's been their weakness, or if you want to call it that, at this point. There's no denying he hasn't looked as good throwing the football.
Just he hasn't. Even if
last
Eagles
year,
fans.
Last year only threw for 3,700 yards. So it's not like he was throwing it around like Tua or Patrick Mahomes, but he was, more effective than he has been in the first 3 games. Now his completion percentage is higher now, slightly. It was 66 last year, almost 68 this year percent. But he missed some passes last night. He made some really nice throws. The first touchdown to Zacchaeus was a great pass. You know, he made some nice throws, but what you're looking for, Rob, is consistency.
That's all.
And he doesn't have to be like Mahomes, as we
Nobody's
mentioned,
saying that,
because
right?
they've got the run game that's great. They've got the defense that's great. So you just want him to, you know, continue to run the football well when he does and make some big plays off with his passing. And I think he will, Rob. The thing I like about Hurts, or one of the things, is his work ethic. He's a leader. He's professional. And we talked about it a couple years ago, Rob. He worked his tail off in the offseason and got way better throwing the football. So I think he'll work it out because I trust his character. And also, Rob, they got great receivers. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert at the tight end. Like, he's got folks to throw to, folks that will get open, folks that can run with after the catch. And so I think his work ethic, his holding himself to such a high standard, and their quality receivers, not to mention the running game. Like, their running game will open up the pass. You have to be so concerned about them running the football down your throats that it's going to open up things in the pass game. So I agree that he has not looked great throwing the football to this point. And interestingly, Rob, he's coming off probably the best game he's had in the NFL throwing the football, which was in the Super Bowl. Remember, he threw for over 300 yards, was fantastic.
That was a showcase game.
Yeah.
Right.
So you thought, okay, he's going to really come out on fire throwing the ball this year. But I think a new coordinator can affect you. He's not playing badly, but he just hadn't been lighting it on fire like he did last year.
I'm just saying,
so,
right. The look last night especially, and maybe, you know, I saw, you know, forget the picks, Chris. Just there were a couple throws I just looked at and were like, last year I think he was making those a little bit and just didn't seem to be as sharp as maybe a year ago. But it's a long way to go. Time to get acclimated to the new OC and continue to build on it. You know, we'll see if his name. Do you expect him to be in the hunt for the MVP? Chris? Yeah.
I mean, he's not right. It's early, obviously.
No,
but
it's
obviously
early.
Tua's the front runner right now.
Tua's a big time front runner after that game.
Yeah, he's the big time front runner. I had Micah up there after 2 games, but obviously he fell off, and it was going to be tough as a defensive player anyway. I think Mahomes, he was my preseason pick, Mahomes. He will be there. You know, I think he'll be there for sure. He doesn't have the greatest weapons outside of Kelsey, but he just is what he is. I mean, the interesting thing is, Rob, when you look at the quarterbacks, Lamar has been okay, but not MVP-like. Josh Allen has been better the last 2 weeks, but his numbers haven't been huge. Burrow obviously battling with the injuries. Trevor Lawrence playing surprisingly poorly. Justin Herbert.
They're off to an 0-3 start, Chris. They're in trouble.
No, 1-2.
Oh,
Tennessee.
1-2.
Jacksonville. But he is, he just hasn't been as good as people have expected. We're expecting him to be. So I think a lot of the leaders, you know, the guys that we would look at or we looked at as MVP front runners aren't really, you know, nobody's off to a great start outside of Tua. So I think that could help Hurts if he gets hot. Obviously, if they go win 13 or 14 games, Rob, that almost automatically puts him in it if his numbers are decent, right?
I'll tell you what, the Tua, that 70-point clinic, Chris, like that puts you out there. You know what I mean? You put on a show. People will not forget that performance against the Broncos. And if he has a good year, he's going to be MVP. You know what I mean? He doesn't have to put those kind of numbers up. But that, if you had the question like he has numbers close or something, you would remember that performance he put on. It's one of those that could win you an award.
Well, if it's close, let's say he and Mahomes are close. Wins are, essentially the same for their teams. He's going to get it over Mahomes because one, as you mentioned, you just got the outlier of the 70-point game.
Right. It's hard to forget
And you know what else, Rob? The narrative, right? We were coming back from last year. Would he stay healthy? Rob, he doesn't even have the contract. They didn't pick up his 5th-year option. Or,
Right.
they picked it up, but he doesn't have a long-term deal. And so all of that would work in his favor as far as that MVP vote. So, yeah, if he, continues to play like this, I mean, he's hands down the MVP front runner right now.
Because they won their first 2 games on the road. Remember that? They beat the Chargers in the opener, Chris.
And they were good games. I mean, they didn't Chargers were right there. That was a good game.
That was a good game.
They won by 2.
Exactly. And then to go the home opener and then to destroy the Broncos. I mean, they're off to a great start. You win your first 2 road games, Chris, in the NFL. You know how hard it is to win on the road. I mean, that's a great start.
And Rob, I mean, he's averaging 341 yards a game. His passer rating is almost 122.
Oof.
8 touchdowns, 2 big. You know who's got terrific numbers, the best numbers in the league? What quarterback's got the best numbers in the league?
I know Love has about how many touchdowns does he have? 6? No.
He's got Jordan Love. He doesn't have the best numbers in the league.
Okay, I know. Does he have 6 touchdowns?
But he's got a good. I think he's got 6. Let's see. He has Jordan Love 7 touchdowns, 1 pick,
3 games. That's not bad.
But the best numbers in the league, Rob, almost across the board. Kirk Cousins, 69.6% completions, leads the league in yards, 358 per game, 9 touchdowns, that leads the league, 2 interceptions, and a passer rating of 108. But they're 0-3. So
I know it's kind of crazy.
I mean, it's not padding stats, but they just can't get a win. And so he has thrown 2 big interceptions, though, that were costly to his team.
I was going to say,
he does have the best numbers just across the board, but obviously not in the MVP race at 0-3.